At the southernmost end of the Earth lies one of its most extreme environments, Antarctica. The coldest, windiest, and most dramatic landscape on the planet. Mountains of ice, sub-zero oceans, and icebergs the size of a country create a unique world that has captured our imagination, yet is so remote that just 2 centuries ago it remained undiscovered. In this world of ice, life must find ways to survive against all the odds. The specialist survivors of this deep freeze can be found both above and below the surface of an icy ocean. Many show little fear of human visitors and are prepared to share their remote home. With explorers brave enough to endure the harsh conditions, to meet some of the planet's toughest survivors. And witness some of nature's most astonishing constructions. In a world where extreme adaptation is needed to survive, an icy kingdom whose ruler comes in a surprising form. A bold hunter that has become an undisputed master of this frozen world and a true legend of the Antarctic. The Tierra del Fuego, or Fireland, is the southernmost area of South America. This island archipelago is separated from the mainland by the Strait of Magellan and is a last staging post for journeys to one of the most extreme regions on our planet, the Antarctic. The surroundings are, however, anything but fiery. Instead, the region's name derives from the campfires of the indigenous people that lined the shores when the first European explorers arrived. At the tip of the archipelago lies Cape Horn, the southernmost point of the South American continent. Sailing around this isolated peninsula remains one of the most challenging nautical routes known to man. The area is swept by some of the strongest gales on the planet, the so-called roaring 40s and furious 50s. That, until the opening of the Panama Canal, struck fear into the hearts of mariners looking to navigate this route to reach the west coasts of the Americas. Between Cape Horn and the Antarctic lie the waters of the Drake Passage, which extend for 800 kilometers to the Southern Ocean. Moving further south, icebergs are a sure sign that the Antarctic continent is about to fill the horizon. Half Moon Island is one of the few places of human habitation and is home to an Argentine naval base that is staffed during the summer months and can only be reached by sea or helicopter. Antarctica remains one of the last true wildernesses on Earth. Most of the sun's energy is reflected by the huge white shield of ice, helping to preserve the sub-zero temperatures at the surface. The coldest temperatures on the planet have been recorded here, But despite air temperatures reaching minus 35 degrees Celsius in summer and falling below minus 70 in winter, life can be found here. Survivors in a land dominated by one overriding feature: ice. Unlike its northern counterpart, the Arctic, which simply floats on top of the ocean, the Antarctic continent is formed from a landmass, but one that is almost entirely smothered in a thick layer of ice. This ice sheet covers almost 14 million square kilometers and represents 98% of the continent's total area, a vast expanse of frozen water nearly twice the size of Australia. These ice sheets average 1.5 kilometers in depth and represent 90% of the world's total ice and 70% of its fresh water. The Antarctic's ice cap is estimated to contain 30 million cubic kilometers of ice, which, if it melted completely, would raise the level of the world's oceans by around 60 meters. The Antarctic is the highest of all the continents, with an average elevation of 2,000 meters above sea level. It's also the windiest place on Earth, and in places the average wind speed reaches more than 35 kilometers an hour and can gust to speeds approaching 250 kilometers an hour. Despite the extreme conditions, since its discovery in 1820, the continent has been an alluring challenge for intrepid human explorers. Although it was not until 1910 that Captain Robert Scott and Roald Amundsen set off on their legendary expeditions to reach the South Pole. Today, several research stations are populated by several thousand people, but there are no permanent residents, and Antarctica has never had a native human population. These hardy scientists live alongside many permanent Antarctic residents that are specialists of this frozen world and bring life to its icy shores in unexpected abundance. At first sight, the Antarctic appears to be an inhospitable world. Precipitation averages 200 millimeters a year at the coast, and even less inland. And on this basis, the continent is classified as a desert. The plunging temperatures and vast expanses of ice restrict the types of plants and animals that are found here, but have not excluded life altogether. The freezing waters between the icebergs can produce hotspots of life. For a few months of the year, the sunlight becomes strong enough to melt some of the sea ice and promote large blooms of tiny aquatic plants known as phytoplankton. Crustaceans such as krill feed on the phytoplankton, and the food chain in these areas swells to support some of the largest creatures that inhabit or visit the continent. And throngs of penguins. 7 penguin species can be found within the Antarctic. These are Gen 2 penguins, easily distinguished from other species by their bright orange bill and white patches above their eyes. Gen 2s stand up to 80 centimeters tall and are the fastest swimming penguin, reaching speeds of around 35 kilometers an hour when underwater, and diving to 170 meters while on fishing expeditions in the cold, dark Southern Ocean. The Gen 2s share their icy shoreline with a number of marine mammals, including Antarctic fur seals. These seals have a dense layer of underfur, much thicker than that of terrestrial mammals, to help them survive the bitterly cold conditions. In the summer months, the gentoos live in breeding colonies of up to several hundred pairs of birds. Their nests are constructed from stones, grasses and mosses, with their droppings fertilizing the ground and ensuring a good growth of grasses the following year. Many pairs form long-lasting bonds and return to the same nest site year on year. Their chicks are produced 2 at a time and are fed by their parents for several months before they're old enough to fend for themselves in the icy seas. During this period, both parents brood the chicks alternately. Their partner sets out to forage in the early morning on fishing trips that may take them 20 kilometers from the nest. As the chicks get larger, their parents must spend ever longer at sea to meet the increasing demands of their offspring. In years of high food availability, large numbers of chicks can be raised by the colony. While in leaner years, hungry chicks may be seen chasing the adults for their fair share of the catch. In such years, only the strongest will survive. The first few months of life are also the most hazardous for Atlantic fur seals. But without land-based predators such as polar bears or humans, those that make it to adulthood show little fear of man and form a peaceful welcoming committee for hardy tourists who make the ultimate trip to experience the beauty that can be found at the very ends of the earth. The icebergs that form the dramatic floating landscape start life on land. Layers of snowfall gradually accumulate and are compressed over centuries into glaciers that slowly flow downhill towards the sea. When the glacier reaches the ocean, waves and weather combine to open up cracks and cause great chunks of ice to shear away from the main ice sheet, creating new icebergs. These icebergs can range in size from small bergs known as growlers of just a few meters in diameter to gigantic slabs of ice which can be the size of a small country. Only around 1/8 of an iceberg is visible above the surface. The uppermost part is constructed of less dense ice and snow, while the ice that lies below the surface is denser and more heavily compacted, which keeps the iceberg's bulk low in the water. As they drift towards warmer latitudes, the huge slabs of ice gradually melt and break up into smaller icebergs, which further increases their danger to shipping. These final stages of an iceberg's life can take several years to unfold. The result is an ever-changing landscape as dynamic and dramatic as any on Earth. No no kingdom would be complete without a monarch to rule it. And within its icy peaks, the Antarctic has produced such a creature, the breathtakingly bold leopard seal. Despite the permanent sub-zero temperatures, the Antarctic does experience seasons. During the winter, the tilt of the Earth's axis positions it away from the sun, and the entire continent is plunged into 6 months of darkness. In the summer months, the continent faces the sun and receives more of its direct rays. For polar explorers, these summer months are the time to venture between the frozen peaks or into the depths of the Southern Ocean, although extreme care must be taken, as the freezing conditions threaten to disrupt the function of both equipment and the human body. And precautions must be taken against the serious risk of hypothermia. Below the surface, the icebergs reveal their true magnitude. The ice in this submerged part of the iceberg is highly compressed from its formation at the bottom of a glacier and is rock hard. This ice may be several thousand years old, but is now embarking on its final stage of life as the iceberg drifts towards warmer waters, where it'll gradually melt and break up. With water temperature reaching -2 degrees Celsius, this may appear to be a challenging environment for creatures to make a permanent home within. But many life forms have adapted to carve out a living. This is a world we've barely explored, but which may contain numerous species new to science. In areas clear of ice, lush algae forests flourish. Some species can reach 15 meters in length and grow more than a meter wide. Between their fronds, starfish and other invertebrates can be found. The cold conditions are perfect for slow-growing species that sometimes reach huge proportions. Some Antarctic starfish can reach 60 centimeters across. Antarctic anemones add to the colorful display. They wait patiently to catch starfish, sea urchins, or jellyfish with their stinging tentacles. While giant-sized crustaceans can be found clinging to the rocks. Even in this frozen world, life has found ways to survive and continue at its own slow and steady pace. The skies above Antarctica can also be filled with color. As the aurora australis, or southern lights, set the sky ablaze. The lights are created by streams of fast-moving charged particles that are carried on solar winds emitted by the sun to the edges of the Earth's magnetic field. At altitudes of between 100 and 300 kilometers above the Earth, these charged particles collide with the Earth's upper atmosphere, transferring their energy to the atmosphere's gases, which causes them to become chemically excited and emit energy in the form of light. The result is an ethereal spectacle of the heavens that captivates all who witness it. Drama in Antarctica is, however, not only found within its majestic scenery and supernatural-looking light shows. Between the frozen peaks and ice floes lives a hunter of legendary status that has made this frozen world into a kingdom of its own. The leopard seal. These members of the seal family can reach close to 4 meters in length and weigh up to 500 kilograms. When hauled out on the ice floes, they may look sluggish. But visitors to the Antarctic should not be deceived. Their name is inspired by the black leopard-like spots on their coat, but the similarity with Africa's famous big cat runs far deeper than this. Below the surface, the leopard seal is a top predator of Antarctica. They're highly inquisitive and will readily approach divers and their cameras. They've even been known to mouth and puncture inflatable boats. Their reptilian-shaped head is armed with a large mouth lined with a variety of teeth, including long, sharp canines. Their cheek teeth are serrated and designed to fit together to form a sieve, which filters small crustaceans such as krill from the water. But the staple diet of the leopard seal is penguins. Using their size and incredible agility, they ambush the penguins as they enter the water, before thrashing them at the surface to separate the skin and feathers from the rest of the carcass, which is consumed. Other smaller members of the seal family may also be on their menu. The leopard seal fills a similar role to that of the polar bear in the Arctic, and other than large sharks and killer whales, has no natural predators. Using powerful foreflippers, they can reach speeds of 40 kilometers an hour. The serpentine body produces the breakneck twists and turns that demonstrate their complete mastery of the underwater world. While a thick layer of fatty tissue beneath the skin, known as blubber, insulates them from the frigid Antarctic waters. Divers often experience close encounters with this seemingly fearless monarch of the ice. But cannot fail to set the adrenaline pumping and leave an impression to last a lifetime.